Sometimes he sold rice, sometimes he worked as a laborer, and sometimes he did farming. He ran away from home 4 times, but all he got was deception. Yet, despite all this, he managed to manufacture his own car. In the beginning, its price and quality was so low that people kept making fun of it and forced it to flop. It was as if he had gotten used to climbing up only to fall back down to the ground, not just once but many times. And this very habit made him so strong that in the end, this boy became the founder of Hyundai, the world's third largest car manufacturing company. But how did this happen? Once again, welcome to a JMTV video. Viewers, Chung Ju-young was born in 1915 in a village called Tongchon in Korea. Today, this village is located in North Korea. At that time, all of Korea was a single country ruled by Japan. Chung was the eldest among his 7 siblings, and due to poverty, the entire family worked in the fields. At just 14 years old, Jung had to leave school because of poverty and started working in the fields with his parents. He would work in the fields all day but earned so little that, despite working, there were many days when he had to go to bed hungry. This situation forced him to think about whether he would spend his entire life in these conditions. He had become fed up with his life, and ultimately he ran away from home and went to Kwon City, 100 kilometers away. There, he started working as a laborer with construction workers. He worked very hard, but still earned very little money. But even in this situation, he was very happy because first, the money he was earning was spent only on himself, and second, he was now free. However, this freedom lasted only 2 months. His parents, who had been searching for him, arrived there, found him and took him back to the village. The happiness that had come into Jung's life for the first time was snatched away, and he was sent back to work in the fields again. But in reality, he had already tasted the pleasures of city life. He did not want to live the village or farming life again under any circumstances. After that, he tried to run away 2 more times, but was caught and brought back to the village to work. One year, the harvest was so poor that the entire village faced a food shortage. Things got so bad that people had to go hungry for several days at a time. Jung thought to himself that he had had enough and would not stay here under any circumstances. Now, he began planning to run away from home for the 4th time, and this time it was going to be his last attempt. This time, he ran away and reached Seoul, which is now the capital of South Korea. It was as if he had made it his life's goal to leave the village and settle in the city, no matter what kind of work he had to do. After coming to Seoul, he didn't turn down any job. He worked as a laborer in construction, became a factory worker, and even did cleaning jobs. He had a quality that whatever work he did it with great dedication and hard work. After some time, he got a job delivering at a rice shop. Now, he started making deliveries to people's homes on a bicycle. Because of him, the shop's sales increased significantly, and the shop owner, pleased with his work, made Jung the manager of the shop. This was his first job where he didn't have to do any kind of manual labor, and in no time, he managed to increase the shop's sales considerably. Meanwhile, the shop owner fell ill and was no longer able to run the shop. Therefore, he sold his shop to Jung for a small price. The boy who used to work in the fields and had run away from home 4 times became the owner of his own shop at just 22 years of age. He worked very hard at his shop, and in a short period, his rice shop came to be regarded as the best store in the area. He was very happy, but during that time an incident occurred that was about to turn his small happiness back into sorrow. On July 7th, 1937, a Japanese soldier went missing somewhere near the Marco Polo Bridge, and to search for him, Japanese soldiers requested permission to look for him in China. However, when China refused to grant them permission, a clash broke out between the 2 sides, which is known in history as the Second Sino-Japanese War. This war, which started over such a small matter, continued for the next 8 years, and as a result, there was a severe shortage of rice in both Japan and Korea. Now, Since at that time Korea was also under the control of the Japanese Imperial Army, for this reason the Japanese government took control of all the rice shops in both Japan and Korea in order to address the shortage. These stores included Jang's rice store, and now once again he found himself unemployed. All his hard work over 2 years, all his savings, everything was multiplied by 0. But Jang did not give up. He now started looking for a kind of work that the Japanese army would not be able to take over. He shortlisted several ideas and finally he decided to open a car repair shop. But the problem was that now Jang didn't have even a little money to start this business. He took a loan of 3,000 won and started a new business under the name Edo Service Garage. But what happened was exactly the opposite of what he had imagined. As they say, trouble never asks before it comes. Suddenly, a fire broke out in Jang's new garage. Not just the garage, but all the cars parked inside were also engulfed by the fire, and Jang was held responsible for all the losses. This time, Jang was in serious trouble. He had to repay both the 3,001 loan and the customer's losses, but he did not lose courage. Once again, he took out a loan of 3,500 won. He reopened the garage and gradually managed to cover all the losses. Now, he shifted his focus towards growing the business. For the next 2 years, Jang continued to make great progress. He started offering jobs to people at his garage. He had 70 to 80 people working for him. He had progressed so much that he brought his entire family from the village and settled them in Seoul City. But once again, a new test stood before him. At that time, World War II was underway and Japan was also involved in the war. Japan needed workshops to manufacture war equipment, and that's why the Japanese government started taking control of the workshops as well. Ultimately, the Japanese government took control of Bilakar Jung's garage once again. But this time, Jung was not left with nothing, because he had learned from the losses he suffered previously and had saved up 50,001 so that he could start another business. A short while later, World War II ended, and with it, Japan's rule over Korea also came to an end. The biggest obstacle in Jung's path had now been removed. Korea had now been divided into 2 parts, North Korea and South Korea. As soon as things returned to normal in 1946, Jung came back to Seoul City and started a car repair business once again, this time with a new identity and a new name. He named the business Hyundai Auto Service this time. This is a Korean word which means modern. Now, Seoul was part of South Korea, which was under American influence. American forces were often present in South Korea, and Jung noticed that the American army needed to have buildings constructed for their accommodation. He thought that if he started a construction business, there was a lot of potential for growth. That's why in 1947 he established a construction company called Hyundai Civil Works. In the beginning, the construction company would get small jobs like building modest houses or constructing a few kilometers of roads, which is quite sufficient for any new business. But Jung wanted to land bigger projects. However, circumstances once again put a brake on his ambitions. On June 25, 1950, with the support of the Soviet Union, North Korea attacked South Korea. Seoul City was close to the North Korean border. That's why Jung sensed the danger and fled from Seoul to Busan. But even this time, Jung did not lose courage. He assessed the situation and began to think of ways to profit from the wartime circumstances. He noticed that the US Army had arrived to help South Korea and that tents, warehouses and some buildings were needed for the army's accommodation. Jung restarted his construction business and offered the American officials that if the budget was right, he could provide any kind of construction service. Since America was a superpower, budget was never an issue for them. The American officials began placing orders with Jung's company. Jung and his team worked day and night to complete every project. The benefit of this was that even though the war ended, a good working relationship had been established between the Americans and Jung. Since Jung was close to the Americans, A good relationship also developed between Jung and the South Korean government. Many roads and bridges were destroyed in this war. The South Korean government awarded the reconstruction projects for these to Jung's company Hyundai. Jung's company had progressed so much that it even built mega projects like dams. South Korea's largest dam, Soyang, was also constructed by Hyundai, and the country's largest Gyeongbu Expressway was also an achievement of this company. Because Jung had a good relationship with the South Korean government and the Americans also liked him, he was able to easily import the heavy machinery used in construction from the USA. Due to these good relations, he was also the first to get contracts. The construction company had already been established, but Jung wanted to return to his old car business. This time, he thought of doing something more than just car repairing. In 1967, he founded Hyundai Motors Company. Very soon, Hyundai formed a partnership with the Ford Company. Ford's Cortina car was famous in the market at that time. That's why Hyundai made an agreement to use Ford's technology to assemble the Cortina car and sell it in South Korea as a Hyundai version. This agreement proved to be very successful, and Hyundai made significant progress because of it. But the car market in South Korea was quite small. According to one estimate, the market was only for about 0 cars, and the chances for growth were very low. That's why Hyundai wanted to export this car internationally. However, they had a disagreement with Ford. Ford said that our agreement was only for the South Korean market. Hyundai could not export it, and that's why the partnership between Ford and Hyundai ended. Immediately after this deal fell through, Chung began looking for a new partner and soon signed an agreement with Mitsubishi Motors. Mitsubishi was now ready to provide Hyundai with car production technology. After this deal, Hyundai produced its first car, which was named the Hyundai Pony. The price of this car was very low, but it was precisely this affordability that made the Hyundai Pony famous in the market, and in no time, it turned Hyundai into South Korea's largest car company. But as we mentioned earlier, at that time South Korea's car market was very small, so there wasn't much chance for growth there. Hyundai began exporting the Pony internationally. This car was successful in several countries. For example, it was very well received in Canada. However, Hyundai wanted to launch this car in the biggest market of all the USA, but because it did not meet the USA's federal emission standards, the car was rejected there. Jung did not give up and made further improvements to the car, and eventually, after meeting the standards, it was launched in the USA as well. This improved version of the Hyundai Pony was introduced in the USA under the name Hyundai Excel. The price of this car was around $5,000, which was almost half the price compared to other cars. That's why, right from the start, this car began to sell rapidly in the USA. Hyundai Motors' profits had now skyrocketed because their business had expanded from South Korea all the way to the USA. Because it was so cheap, people started making jokes about it, saying that if you filled up the fuel tank of the Hyundai Excel, the car's value would double. While its price was half compared to other American cars, its quality was also not as good, and people had to get it repaired again and again. Before long, the Hyundai Excel flopped badly in America. Not giving up, Hyundai started working even harder and began introducing new models along with improving their engines and parts. These new models started making a name for themselves not just in America but in other countries as well. This time their quality was good too, and they were also affordable. That's why customers were happy with them as well. Soon, Hyundai began to be counted among the world's major car companies. Chung Ju-young, who had started his journey selling rice, had now become the owner of a successful multinational company. Due to old age, his health was no longer the same. That's why he retired and handed over the company to his sons. In 2001, Chung passed away, leaving behind the world's third largest car manufacturing company. But there are some facts related to Hyundai that you might not have known before. The Hyundai logo does not represent the first character H of Hyundai, but rather it depicts two people shaking hands. One is a company representative and the other is a satisfied customer. Hyundai's manufacturing plant in Ulsan is the largest plant in the world, capable of producing 1.5 million cars annually. And worldwide, Hyundai produces more than 6 million cars each year. We hope that you will also like and share this video from Gem TV just as much. Thank you so much for your loving comments. See you in the next amazing video.